afternoon. At the tone, Pacific Daylight Time will be 5, 4, and 30 seconds.
What? Oh my God, we're having an earthquake. Wait a minute. Hold on. Can you feel that? Yes, I sure can. Okay, this is interesting. There go the lights. Oh.
We are here with Debra Heavens. It is the 12th of September 2019 at the Community TV Recording Studio. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you start by telling me how long you've lived in Santa Cruz?
I've lived here 40 years. I came from the South, and before that I was raised on the East Coast.
Oh, okay. So tell me what you were doing before, during, and after the earthquake.
So I was downtown that afternoon, and I had decided to, once in my life, start Christmas shopping early.
Oh.
And the only reason I left downtown was because my middle school daughter had a basketball game. So I knew I had to leave, and luckily I did have to leave because I was heading down towards Ford's, the department store that collapsed. And so I left downtown and I went to watch my daughter play basketball in the Branch 40 gym, which is a very old building. It's an old gym, and like many parents, we had a little group of friends, parents, that we sat on the bleachers. We usually sat near the top of the bleachers. And I think the game probably started at 5. And the first thing that happened was the sound, which I will never forget. The only thing I could compare it to is hearing a freight train, the roar of a freight train really close. But it was a sound you've never heard before or since. And the other thing that my brain clicked into was sometimes at these games on the wooden bleachers, we would be stamping our feet really hard. And it's like the roar of that, but it wasn't. And then the whole building started to sway and shake and really move a lot. And the funny universal thing that happened was all the dads leaped down those bleachers for their daughters that were on the court. Never mind about the wife next to them. They were gone. And it was so amazing to me, so instinctual for them to just be, they're down there. And then, of course, we followed as the building was still moving or stopped moving. We got out of that building, and we all gathered on the field out in the middle, away from the building. And from Branch of 40, the junior high gym there, you can see you're above downtown. So we saw all the smoke rising from the fires, the building, we couldn't tell if it was dust or just chimneys, buildings collapsing, but it was both. It was dust from buildings collapsing that was rising up, and the fires. And so everybody was kind of shocked and mind blown and gathering up, and we obviously we knew it was an earthquake. We didn't know what was going to happen next, but people decided on their own time to head for home. Yeah.
Did you know how big at the time or how significant it was?
No. We knew it was big, and I didn't grow up in California, so for me, there'd been some small shakes, but nothing. No, we didn't know. And we headed home to, we live in Live Oak near Pleasure Point. So when it hit me, it was big. Was, I think, turning onto Capitola Road. The road was like a wave. I mean, it had big ridges in it. And I thought, okay, this is kind of big, kind of big now.
Did you experience anything emotionally, physically, or spiritually during the earthquake?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So obviously, initially, shock, but as a parent, you're look. And the other really lucky thing for us, for our family, is that we were all together because we had talked about emergency plans about where would we meet if something like this happened. But in that moment in time, you know, my husband left work early. I stopped shopping, I went, so that was really a blessing, and I felt really grateful that we were all together and that I didn't have to wonder where, you know, if Leona had just been at school practicing for a game, then it would have been a lot more scrambling, a lot more anxiety before cell phones. You know, I think there was definitely concern, but I wouldn't say I felt a lot of fear. I'm sure I felt anxiety. I felt worried for friends until I knew who was safe, and spiritually, I think as as time passed and we saw how our community came together, it really brought out the good in people. It really brought out, you know, when we got home, you know, we talked to neighbors that never talked to each other, that just, you know, everybody's busy, you know, and it's not that you're not friends, but you're just going about your life. But everyone was like, are you okay? Where's your dog and your cat? You know, what about the elder, you know, go check on the elder down the street, you know, are they okay? So I found that it's always really reassuring to see the good in people.
Yeah. So it seemed like the earthquake really kind of impacted the community in a positive way, would you say?
Oh, I really think so. I really think so. It's the pause to reflect on what matters in life and what your priorities are is really huge. Mm-hmm. Like, do you really care about your stuff, or do you care about the people you love? And then seeing how the business community downtown got the tents up, the temporary, that happened very quickly. Like in 3 to 4 weeks, you could shop at Bookshop Santa Cruz and some of the other. So that was really huge that they pulled that off. And of course, you wanted to support. You wanted to go down there and spend your money if you had some. And yeah,
it's great.
Yeah.
Did the earthquake impact your life at all?
The earthquake impacted my life in some more minor ways. I would say when we got home, we had some damage. We had, you know, a little separation between our upstairs deck and our home that we had to get repaired, but it wasn't a big thing. And we had a lot of we had a shelf tip over with china in it, you know, really minor, really minor. It impacted friends. It more than our family. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or?
Just we had an acquaintance who died. Who was one of the people that died, and just the awareness of safety. It made me become more prepared for emergencies.
So this influenced your precautions and taking preparedness against natural disasters in the future?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
What do you do, if I can ask?
Oh, yeah. So after the earthquake, I put a lot of, I'm a nurse, and my story, I want to tell you about my night at the hospital. I'll tell you that. But after the earthquake, I carried a change of clothes. I carried a lot of first aid supplies, water, shoes. miscellaneous odds and ends. I had 2 boxes in my car for a long time, like years. And I still have a box. I've tried to whittle it down. I'm never without cash. You couldn't use the ATMs, and so I always keep a certain amount of cash hidden in different places. And I don't think I'm as prepared as I should be. I mean, at that time, I really stocked up on food and water. And then every once in a while you get these reminders and it's on the to-do list. And it's, you know, what I tell my husband when, you know, it's like, okay, we need to do some more stuff now. Trade out those old cans of food or the old water and in the garage. And should we have stuff outside the house? You know, we learned that we should have a big trash can with a lot of things outside. Mm-hmm. And the you know what I think is that you'll feel really stupid if you didn't do this when you could have. You know, and why don't you make it a priority? You know, so some years I have more together than others. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were a nurse.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
So yeah, that's another, I think, interesting part of my story is that I was a new registered nurse at that time in my life, and so I had to go to work that night at Dominican, and I worked the graveyard shift. Mm-hmm. And so it was 11 to 7:30 in the morning. And my daughter really didn't want me to go, and she cried, and she asked me, don't go, Mom, can't you not go? And I said, no, I really need to go. I need to show up. And I actually went in a little earlier, and, I reassured her, but there were so many aftershocks, and really strong ones that night. And of course, we were on generator power. Lights were very dim. We had no running water. We had wipes and other supplies. But I was very fortunate in that for some reason that night they tried to pair some of us newer nurses, or maybe it was just the floor that they sent me to. Mm-hmm. At that time I was afloat and I would work everywhere. And they paired me with the most kindest, experienced older nurse, old enough to be my mom, and we just paired up and we did the care together, and she changed the experience for me, and I'm forever grateful to Beverly because she was calm and reassuring, and we're going to get through this night. And I happened to be put on the floor that probably had the most incontinent, immobile people in the hospital. And the scariest thing in the hospital that night was the regular aftershocks that were strong, and the TVs were mounted to the wall, not right next to the wall, but on like a bracket that comes out from the wall, and then the TV. Mm-hmm. And every time there was an aftershock, you really, really thought that TV might come right off the wall and land on your patient in the bed, because that's where it was going to go. It wasn't going to hit the floor, I don't think. It might have, if you were lucky, but it was probably going to hit this patient. Mm-hmm. So it was a great lesson in the ability to stay calm and not look worried and have faith and be reassuring even when you're not sure yourself. And we didn't know if we would have to evacuate. I remember the house supervisor coming around and checking on people in the night, and wondering, well, if we did, how would we? And hearing the helicopters coming and going, and many people had heart attacks. Many people, if they didn't have a heart attack, they thought they were having a heart attack. Anyone with a heart problem had heart pain. And that was a night that I'll never forget, you know. And I really, it was really interesting. And none of the TVs came off the wall, but we sure thought they were going to.
That's good.
More than once.
Yeah.
And every day things got a little better. I mean, I had to go to work after that. A lot of people that weren't on their shift that night came to the hospital. A lot of people just showed up to help. So that was very heartening to see. And I think I probably went to work one night when I didn't have to, just in the aftermath of things getting back to normal.
Did Dominican have a hospital-wide emergency plan that they were able to implement that you know about, or was it just sort of flying off the cuff?
I'm sure they had one, but I think it was, I honestly don't remember, because I had only been employed since June when I got in school, so, but I know that after that, a lot more was done with emergency plan, hospital-wide, a lot more practice, a lot more classes, educating staff. I think the hospital did really well. Everybody really pulled together, and that was another case where you saw it just bring out the best in people. To see people rise to the occasion, it's very heartening. Yeah.
What's it like to reflect on your experience 30 years later?
It's interesting because you know you lived through something big, and so there is strength in that. There's strength in knowing that if it happened again, you know, that hopefully you make wise choices and things will be okay. And I think that I think we slept out one night in our yard. I know a lot of people were sleeping in parks and out in their yard, and I think it makes you reflect on the value of life, what's important, what matters and what doesn't, how we can be so caught up in worrying about things that don't really matter. So I think there's a real opportunity there for spiritual growth and for community coming together, which really matters to me. Yeah. One of the cool things that happened was, I don't know if it was a few weeks after, but there was a concert down in Watsonville in a park, or maybe it was at the high school, outside. There was an outside concert, and Santana came. And to see everyone, it didn't matter, you know, rich or poor, race, that music was so uplifting, and everyone was experiencing togetherness and community and compassion, joy. That was really a real blessing to see that and be a part of that, because my belief is that's really who we are as human beings. We just have to create those situations more in our lives to come together and see that our differences are smaller than we may think some days. And I did take care of, there was a woman at the department store Ford's downtown who was severely injured, and I was her nurse for many shifts. She was in the hospital for weeks recovering, and to just see her process of strength and resilience in such a vulnerable time. Yeah, it really, it was a very good education for me, being, in a healing profession. Yeah, it was.
Was it the woman who was on the cover of the Sentinel?
Yeah, I believe it was. Yeah, I'm trying to remember her name. Yeah, I don't know. But she really went through a lot, and it was a really long recovery for her.
Yeah.
And so it really makes you reflect on how lucky you are, I think. It provokes a lot of gratitude. And for myself, I really pay attention to people that have more challenges than I do, and I try to learn. I try to imagine, well, how do I want to be if that was me? I really try to observe and reflect and work on myself.
So you would say it's impacted your decision making?
Yeah.
A little bit
Oh
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that knowledge that we live in earthquake country, we still need to be prepared. We still do, and we always probably need to refresh and relook at that. And my daughter that was playing basketball, she's a mother. I have teenage grandsons, and so every once in a while I talk to them about, okay, where would we meet, or what do you have, what supplies do you have, and bought them a ladder to get out the upstairs window, things like this that, and I need to improve my own my own preparedness. It's kind of like you need to revisit that,
Yeah.
and not get complacent.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
Like everyone else who lived here, really loved the Cooper House. It was just, it was a landmark for all of us. It was a place that always had a nice, clean bathroom you could use. It had many great businesses. I love history. It was just such a wonderful building. And that came down very fast. The decision was made that building could not be saved. And I believe it was within 2 weeks. I know it was very fast, and we were all stunned that the decision was made so quickly, and we couldn't believe it, and we wondered if they really had to take it down. And yeah, I went down and watched the wrecking balls with many, many people on the streets, just watching, wishing it wasn't happening. And it was such a gathering place. They always had the band outside, and it was just a real focus for the community, a place where you could hear music, where people would dance, you could get food out there. And moving here from somewhere else, that was a real touchstone focus on the mall down there. And so that was sad. That was really sad. But I saw the leadership in the community come together to make decisions. I know that at that time there was a lot of discord on the Santa Cruz City Council, and they were able to let go of all that and take care of all the business they had to unexpectedly have on their plate now. And so people came together. And I think for me right now, with what's going on in our community, it reminds me of, it just causes me to reflect on how many people became homeless then and had to figure out where to go, what to do, where to live. At that time, the homeless on the streets were much, much smaller in number and not very visible. And I know that a lot of people went to parks and just put up tents. A lot of people were not safe in their apartment buildings. And so people would just say, okay, we're going to sleep in the park. And some people did that for 3 days, 5 days, a week. It really depended where you lived. But in talking about all this, it really makes me think about our homeless now and how we need to work really collaboratively as a community. And I see it as a failure of our society that at so many different levels that we have people that have nowhere to be. Yeah, so that it kind of brings that up for me.
Yeah. And imagine how hard it would be to react to another large-scale disaster without any resources when you already don't have resources.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah.
It's an added disparity.
It is. It is. Yeah. But when you see what people can do, so there's this big disaster in many communities when there is a flood or a hurricane, people do come together and we need, I almost feel that we need to look at our homeless situation as that. We can't be complacent about it, and we can't be so divisive. And we need to think of it as an emergency because it really is for those people, and it is for us, and it could be us.
Yeah.
It could be our loved one.
Very easily.
Yeah, so, yeah. Just that I really appreciated how hard people worked in the emergency services and medical and policemen and just everybody that was helping their neighbor and looking out for kids and yeah.
Great. Well, if you don't have anything else you'd like to add, I think that we've reached the end of our story together. But I really appreciate you coming here and sharing with us.
Thank you.
At the end, yeah.
I think it's really, really important that stories get told. It was something that taught us resilience and its history, and I'm really happy to be part of the project, and I'm really glad that you're gathering stories. It's really great, so thank you. Thank you.